In this video, we are going to learn how to take a single frame render in Unreal Engine 5. For creating any renders within the engine, the first thing you need to do is create a camera. You can do this using the Place Actors window. You have a section here for cameras, and I want to create a Cine Camera Actor. But an easier way to do it, if you already have an angle that you want, is to create it from your Unreal Engine window. By the way, if you don't see a Place Actors window, if you go up to Window and Place Actors and turn that on, it's going to appear on the left. But for me, I'm just going to go up to these three lines right here and create camera here. And it's going to ask me a camera actor or a Cine Camera Actor, and I'm going to turn on Cine Camera Actor. So now I have this camera actor created. I want to make sure I am looking through this camera first. So I'm going to go up to perspective. Right now it's on the default viewport. I'm going to change this to Cine Camera Actor. And you can set this to cinematic viewport if you want. I'm going to just leave it at the default. Let's see, Cine Camera Actor at the default viewport so we can see exactly what our render is going to have. The next thing we need to do is we need to create a level sequence. Without a level sequence, we cannot render. So I'm going to go to my content drawer and I'm going to, if you have folders set up, you can create this within a specific folder called level sequences, but I'm going to right click and go to cinematics and create a level sequence. And I'm going to name this room underscore renders. And this will open out on a window called sequencer, and you will automatically open the sequencer if you double click on this. And let's close out the content drawer. Here is our sequencer. So now we have a level sequence on the sequencer. You can see it on the right over here, room renders, and I just want to drag my Cine Camera Actor onto this. So this sequencer in Unreal Engine works similar to any other video editing software. You have your Cine Camera Actor in here, and you have camera cuts, which is essentially a section that you can use if you have multiple cameras. So you could set up your Cine Camera Actor, and you could create another Cine Camera Actor. So if I just go in here and drag in another Cine Camera Actor, I could reduce this camera cut to this section and bring in my other Cine Camera Actor and drag that into camera cuts. And now if I am active on this camera, it's going to go from this to my other Cine Camera Actor. So this is basically how the sequencer works. You just bring in all your cameras into the sequencer, and then you're able to use the camera cut section of the sequencer to switch between cameras. But for us, we just want a single frame render. So I'm just going to go to my, let's see, I want it from this camera. So I'm just going to reduce my section, these red bars over here, and take this to just render out one frame. So let me, just like any other timeline, you can reduce this so you can see this better. And let's take this all the way to 1. And once you do that, you should be able to render out just a single frame. I'm going to go to my movie render queue, and you can do this by, so if you click on these three dots right here, you see that you have two options. It says the legacy option in Unreal, and this is movie render queue. If you don't see movie render queue, just go up to settings, plugins, and type in movie render queue and just turn that on. Once you tick this, Unreal Engine is going to restart, and you then will have the movie render queue option. So I want to render using movie render queue. That is what it's set to, and I'm going to click on this. And let's just create a quick render. So I'm going to go to unsaved config and save a PNG sequence, and I'm going to turn on anti-aliasing and set this to maybe 16. And that should be good for now. This should be good. And I'm going to click on accept. And now it's going to save to whatever folder I've set here. So I think this should be good. And let's render local. since we are in the section, let's also take a look at some settings for the movie render queue that you can use to get better renders. The first thing to keep in mind is that if you go back to my scene right here, the movie render queue is by default rendering this cinematically. So what does that mean? That means that if I go to my settings here, you can see that you have engine scalability settings. It's usually set to epic. So this is what we see when we are moving around inside the Unreal Engine. And then you can set it to low or medium or another setting that makes performance better. But unless you change this, by default, it is rendering at cinematic at the highest quality. You most likely don't want to turn on cinematic when you are still working, but once you're done with whatever you are setting up in the engine, you can turn this on to just see how it looks. So it's rendering at cinematic. Um, that's just something to keep in mind. And let's go back to this movie render queue. So I'm going to go to unsaved config and open that out. And I'm going to delete the JPEG sequence. And I'm going to add a PNG sequence. And then I'm going to, whatever is in here, that is okay for now. And I'm going to add in anti-aliasing to make sure we get good quality. And you have spatial sample counts and temporal sample counts. So increasing the temporal sample counts and the spatial sample counts both is better for moving renders where you have motion blur. But if you're just rendering out a single frame, just increasing the spatial sample count is good enough. You can start off with a lower number like 32 or 64, or you can go to 256 and just set this to override anti-aliasing and set the anti-aliasing method to none. This usually gives you pretty good effects, and you can, if you want to do a lot of post-processing, the best way to render out would be through an EXR sequence and to render out multiple passes. But if you just want a pretty good render that is rendered out in a single pass, a PNG sequence is perfectly fine. And you can also turn on game overrides and you can turn on other settings here. But this will get you pretty good cinematic results. And then you click on accept. And another thing that you need to set up is in your output, just set your output resolution to 3840 by 2160. This is going to give you a 4K render, and it's going to render at 24 FPS by default. We're not too worried about that because we just have a single frame, and you can leave everything else as is. So I'm going to accept. And once we do this, let's take a look at what our final render looks like. I'm going to click on render local. So this is my final render from Unreal. If I go back to the engine, you will see that this is a little less saturated than what's in the engine. This can easily be fixed by just taking this into Photoshop and applying a hue saturation effect and just upping the saturation. But this is pretty much exactly what we have inside the engine rendered out. So these settings will usually get you where you need to be.